How's Mexico? Been in Mexico for a few years now, is that right?
Woo, like 6 or 7 years now. Yeah, I first came, so I was still teaching English actually when I lived in Philadelphia. And I taught English in Jordan. I lived in Jordan. I lived in Canada for a while. I lived in the US, right? Kind of all over teaching
Mhm.
English. And then I was actually unemployed at the time. And because the language school I worked for got closed down, so I was getting unemployment. We're kind of running out of my unemployment. And suddenly, an old school friend got in touch with me on
Mhm.
Facebook. And this was a woman who when I lived in France when I was young, I lived with her family. I was an exchange student. And she, out of the blue, sent me this message. Oh, I see you're an English teacher now. Hi, how have you been for the past 20 years? I see you're an English teacher. And would you consider coming to Mexico for a year? Because I live in Mexico. She's originally from France. I live in Mexico. I've lived here for many years and I'm the language coordinator at this school. Would you consider coming to Mexico for a year? So sure. And that was like 7 years ago. So, you know, during during pandemic, things got a little bit more difficult, a little bit more complicated. And I had already kind of started to work on accent coaching. But during pandemic, I was like, no, no, no. I'm just going to go full speed ahead with this. So that was, when was pandemic? Like 3 years ago, something, 2 years ago. So that's when I was like full speed ahead. But before that, I was kind of figuring things out as I go. And, and I knew I didn't want to work exclusively with actors. I think because of the whims of people and people's schedule. And I need this yesterday. And I don't think I could be happy
Yeah.
doing that. So instead, I continue to work with, normal people who need help. Maybe they work in a call center. Maybe they work giving presentations for a board. Maybe they're English teachers themselves who, want a better job or want to sound more clear.
Mm.
That's kind of like the population that I work with more or less. But also actors whose first language is not English, they usually come to me. I don't really advertise that as much, but they usually come to me. So that's a lot of fun too, because it's a very varied kind of thing.
That's awesome.
Mm.
Yes, I also was an English language teacher for a little while online with a prolific American company. I enjoyed it. I always did the graveyard shift, which was midnight to 3 here.
But you were in the UK at that time? Okay.
No, California, it was like the morning time in
Oh,
Europe. So
okay.
I would get a
Okay.
lot. One of their big clients was Vodafone, who is a like cellular provider in Europe, and so I
Mm.
would get almost exclusively German people who work for Vodafone. But it was so much fun with them, and it's interesting hearing the variety come through of that. Also, Germans as a people are very very proficient in
Mm.
English,
Mhm,
but
mhm.
they think that they're not. They're like, oh, I could probably argue about something at a college level, but if I didn't know the word, then I would have to use other words to. And you're like, yes, and I could say red. So you're fine.
That's fair,
Um,
yeah.
um, but it was interesting to hear the range of accents there because some learn from Americans, some learn from English.
Mm, mhm, mm.
Whereas historically, I would say the majority of the kind of European population have UK English
Mhm.
accents,
Mhm, mhm,
whereas
yeah.
the Latin American population would have more of a American.
Mhm, mhm.
But that's not necessarily the case anymore in Europe, at least.
You teaching English online, was that what got you into accent coaching as well and dialect coaching? Or how did that happen?
That was in conjunction with, because I thought, if I'm teaching these accents to people, then it'd be great to have access to all these other accents as well. Because I did have people that, like, some people were from South Korea, some people were from Belgium, some people were Brazilian. So I would get to hear the kind of the authentic second language accent rather than
Mhm.
just being like, oh, this sounds right.
You could see where they were coming from instead of just where they were going.
Exactly. Get
Mm.
more of a deep dive into the things that we were talking about earlier, like tone and how that can get just mashed on top of the new accent
Mhm,
or the
mhm,
new language.
mhm.
Typically, the kind of the rules and the structures of the first language tend to imprint onto the
Yeah,
second
yeah.
language.
Yeah, yeah,
Uh,
definitely. Mhm.
it's interesting hearing how kind of people how they do use sarcasm and jokes in English. And I was like, yeah, that's great, actually.
Nice. Yeah, there's so many layers there. I think for me, the interesting part is like picking apart when something sounds off, you're like, okay, but what is it exactly? Right? Like, why didn't that joke land? Right? Or like you just stress that word a millisecond a little too much or a little too little. And like, and figuring out which one of those things, is the problem, then to me, that's the fun part is like unraveling the ball of yarn and figuring out how to get the knot loose. What do you love most about this kind of thing?
The Sherlock Holmesing of it, absolutely
Mm.
that too. I've also had a couple of instances recently where I've done that, and then it's been more of an epiphany to be like, oh, this is actually something I've seen in a lot of other people. I've just managed to pinpoint it right now.
Mm.
And then I'll
Mhm.
meet with one of the other people, and then I'll be like, you know what, you just did that. uh, one thing that comes to mind right now is that doing kind of a more regional English, like London estuary sort of accent, you can start dropping some T's when they're into vocalic.
Mhm.
But I was finding people were dropping loads of things, and I was like, "What is happening?" But it
Hmm.
was they were dropping D's as well because medial T's sound like a D
Close
in
enough, yeah.
American, like
Mhm,
better.
mhm,
So
mhm,
then, like, if they said like did did it,
mhm,
they
mhm.
would be like did it, but
Mm.
you can't ever drop a
Yeah, yeah.
D in that accent. And then I was like, oh, but they sound the same. It's like us putting these intrusive R's everywhere. Like,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
so now I'm like, okay, we're gonna go through and circle every D in your script.
Mhm,
You're like, keep that.
mhm,
Uh,
mhm.
but then I noticed it with another person that I'd never met before that was doing a different audition. And I was like, aha. And
Mhm.
again, it makes sense now because I see how you got here. So now I'm trying to
Mm.
unravel that and put it back.
What
Yeah.
what what the triggers are, right? And whether it's like a personal thing or their background or just something that you just noticed with somebody else and you're like, "Oh, that's happening too." So you're into like the Sherlock thing about that too. Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah. Because I feel like at the to start any one's career, you can quite easily find quick fixes for things.
Mhm, mhm.
But it's sourcing how we got to the issue first is obviously the bigger long term thing. You want to unravel it from the root rather than just being like, "That's everything."
Mhm.
And that
Mhm.
sounds great.
Mhm. Yeah, like the quick fix thing you said, like, "Oh, if I have this audition tomorrow, like, can I pull it off good enough for now?" Versus like, "Is this something I'm interested in? And can I like, get this as a skill so that I can turn it off and on more voluntarily when I want to do that?"
Yes, and independently.
Yes. Yeah, I think that's important what you said, independence and empowerment too, and this like skill cultivation. For me it's all about like seeing them happy. I used to speak like this and now I speak like this and I notice that and that's what makes me happy versus I can turn this accent on for this audition, I can just turn it off and or wear it to a party like a jacket. To me that's the exciting thing is like seeing how people react to the skills and being empowered like that.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Mm, no, this might come outdated, but I don't mean it to be. I don't necessarily expect people to do their homework. And
Mm,
that
mm.
that's just part of being an adult. Things get in the way and like I know maybe it's something that I also struggle with, perhaps. I'll tell people what to do and I'm not expecting them to do it. So
Mhm, mhm.
on the occasion when people have actually absorbed the information and gone further, then I'm suddenly like,
Whoa.
let's be best
Yes.
friends. I
Yes,
love this.
yes.
You sound
Uh-huh,
amazing.
uh-huh.
How did we get here?
Yeah, yeah.
And they're like, oh yeah, but you told me to. And I'm like, I did, but it, but you
But
did
nobody does that. Yeah,
it.
yeah, 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 yeah. Yeah, I'm the same way. You can have somebody who has had the lesson, same lesson. Somebody goes home and you've told them, "Hey, do this thing," and they come back and they say, "Oh, I didn't have time." Right? I prefer that 1,000 times to somebody who says, "Hey, I had time, but I had nothing to do." Right? I didn't know what to do with my time. Like that's the worst to
Mm.
me. So I love to give people work, right? But I don't necessarily expect it to be done. But like you said, I'm super happy when they do it. And for me, I love it when people drive the bus. When they tell me what they want to
Yeah.
work on. I know you can't always do that when working with actors, but But if somebody comes to me and they say, you know what, I want to work on syllable stress today, that makes my day. Like, let's do it. This is a party.
Yeah, that's a good way to think about it. But on occasion, I'll be like, okay, we can either do this or this today, but I very rarely put the full ball in their court. But maybe I'll try it.
Yeah. Yeah. My first question is usually, hey, what's on your mind today? What's bothering you most? Like, let's try to tackle that. And, we might not be done today, but at least we can move forward. What's your biggest challenge right now? Let's see what we can do about that.
How are all of your various channels on Twitch and Discord and Steam and
All the platforms, right?
yeah, Discord's one of those things that I feel makes so much sense for me because I started off in like a gaming sort of world, and
did
I
you? Mhm.
got it when I have an account for when Pokemon Go was big, and it would tell me when to go to get the thing. But I've never really like understood it or used it apart from that. So I feel like it's something that I need to learn because I think it would make sense.
I think it's gonna get more and more used. It's that other thing where you're like, "Oh, I should get to know it now because it's just gonna get bigger and bigger, and at least get your toes wet." I can show you around there. I can show you what we do. Sometime if you want like a little mini training, I'm happy to help you with that.
Anyway,
Well, and maybe now that you've got downtime, maybe now's a good time to record more stuff and, get to know
yes.
Discord, all that stuff. Yeah, yeah. Awesome. Awesome.
I think it
Yeah.
makes
All right.
a lot of
Well,
sense.
tell us a little bit about you. Tell us like your background. You said you moved from Chicago, but what else? Like give us a sense of who you are for people who don't know you.
Yeah. Well, it's always a pleasure being on here with you. Thank you for inviting me on here. My name is Jack, sometimes called Accent Coach Jack. I'm, as you can probably hear, originally from England. And so I lived there. I grew up there until I was in my mid-20s when I moved to America. I was in Chicago for 3 years working at regional theaters, helping actors there, and then made the big move to LA. And so I've been working on TV and film out here. It's been really exciting, and just to really see behind the curtain and see the good and the wildness of that, the things that you see online for the Oscars, like that Rami Malek and the Iron Lady, where they've had 3 months of prep and they've been doing this, and then you also get calls that say, "We're shooting this in 10 days' time. The lead needs to have an accent," and they've never done it before. Go.
Good luck with that. Yeah. Do your best.
I also enjoy that, the dichotomy of that.
And I hear things are pretty crazy right now in terms of like writers and actors. Can you briefly tell us like what's going on? Give us the recap and why this happened.
Yeah, so right now the WGA, which is the Writers Guild of America, are currently on strike um, for a number of reasons, but it's mainly to do with things like streaming, the way that staffing rooms have changed since the pandemic and Zoom. People were like, "Oh, we don't actually really need that many people. We could just have like 3 people to write a whole show, and that'll be fine." And then this huge leap forward with AI that's happened in the past couple of months has also repercussions on writers and all of the industries, really. But the with the streamers specifically, it's to do with residuals that you get paid, because in TV land, for actors and writers, you get a certain amount of money for either starring in or writing the show. But then the more that it's played, you then get money over time from that. And that's really where you make the majority of your money, because you spent all these months trying to type it before it was out in the world, making it. And so that's how they get most of their income. But when it switched from network TV and broadcast to streamers, it wasn't a slight dip. It was astronomical, the difference between what you would get for something that is streamed by 6 million people on Netflix versus like 2 million people watching on broadcast.
Mhm, mhm.
There's a huge disparity between those two.
And how's that going right now as of today? I know that when we set out this podcast episode, it'll be a bit later, but what are things like looking like now and also for actors as well? How is this impacting them?
Right now, there doesn't seem to be any movement from the big exec, as is typical. But SAG, the Screen Actors Guild of America, the acting union, they have just authorized the right to strike as well. So it's likely that in the next, depending on when this comes out, next few days, next couple of weeks, that SAG will also go on strike, which will mean that nothing can be filmed. Because right now, if something has been written already, you're still technically allowed to film it. They just can't do any rewrites to it. So it's
Mm.
just like whatever's there is what you have to say, and that's it. But if the Screen Actors Guild also strike, then that shuts down all production, both
Mhm.
scripted and non-scripted. Because a lot of reality TV's fine right now because that's technically unscripted, so it doesn't need the writers.
Mhm.
But if the Screen Actors also strike, then that's going to affect that too.
Uh-huh. And what would be the purpose of the SAG, the SAG going on strike? Is it solidarity, or do they have their own beef with what's going on?
Half and half, because the residuals also affects them when it comes to streaming. So that is part of that. I think I think they have a list of demands, but also part of it is in solidarity with the writers as well.
Yes, we as accent coaches, let's get our pronunciation really clear.
Exactly.
Solidarity.
Nobody understood a single word.
Completely incomprehensible. So there's the writers, there's the actors, and whether that's acting on stage, on screen, on I guess voiceovers as well. How are some other things affecting what's going on as well, like technology and things like that?
Yeah, so one of the big kind of scary unknowns, there always are when big scientific advances happen, is what is happening with AI. Now, everybody loves ChatGPT. It's doing so many great stuff for people, menial tasks that you might spend hours doing it. Like, oh, spit it out. Here you go. The issue is that as machine learning gets more advanced, the worry is that people to cut production costs will type in a prompt, get them to write a bad-ish script, but that structurally sound, and then just hire like somebody in to come and what they say, punch up the script, make it
Mm,
a bit funnier, make it sound a bit more like a human wrote it, but it's much less hours, less intellectual property. Obviously, you don't get the same credit, same pay that you would. And
mm,
so they're just trying to get machines to do that. And then one thing that is a little worrying in our field, there's, again, amazing applications for this. For example, I saw online that Apple are promoting this as, say, you suddenly have a stroke or you have an accident and it affects your voice or your ability to speak. You can record certain passages and then it will be able to replicate your voice whenever you type something in.
mhm, mhm,
So that is a great use medically for sure.
hmm,
But in terms of voiceover or dialect coaching, often when you audition for a voiceover, it will say something like, "We're looking for a Brad Pitt type voice, a Denzel Washington type voice."
mm, mhm,
So
mhm.
they're looking for an actor that can kind of sound like that. But if you've already programmed the computer to sound similar to that, why pay an actor?
Yeah, anybody can sound like that. Yeah, it can be completely synthetic, I imagine, or some in a way like a filter, right? That we have visual filters. You
Exactly.
could just have an audio filter that would
Audio.
be yeah, that would be really easy to just slap that on there, you know, or just make it from scratch, 100% as these voices kind of get back. I can see how it's super scary how so many of those things are going to happen. I mean, even right now, the editing software that I use, right? You can read a few passages yourself and overdub your own voice pretty fairly, and it sounds really, really good if you're not being picky about it. So I can see how within a very short amount of time, that could be quite scary. So what do you think
Absolutely.
about this then? What do you think about, like, future proofing, the jobs of people, or do you think that that's ridiculous and, we just have to deal with the technology as it is? What are your thoughts on that?
It's interesting. This is a bit of a sidebar, but I feel like it's related.
Go
um,
for it.
when I first moved from Chicago to California, it was around the time of the legalization of marijuana.
Mm,
And I was talking with somebody who was a lawyer, and they were having to write the laws that would be put in place for when the legalization happened. And I think it's a similar thing here because it's uncharted territory. There are no boundaries, there are no rules, there are no laws. So we have to figure out how it can be used effectively that it's not going to decimate the whole entire industry, but it's still a useful tool. How can it be used in a kind of benevolent way
Mhm.
as
Mhm.
opposed to just
Mhm.
machines taking over the world?
Yeah. Yeah. Skynet is already here as far as I'm concerned. But I think we have to, like we have to think about there's not just, like, what can it do, but there's what should it do as well, because there's, this, like, human economy that we have, and we have to kind of protect
Yeah.
people, and I think there's a lot of layers to this. What else is on your mind about that? Anything else?
Um, I I mean, I kind of want to try it out.
Of course.
I think it would have lots of fun practical applications, just like you mentioned, as like a voice filter. I think would be very successful for people. But yeah, I would like to see what it does. I'm interested in how the machine learning happened with the accent. If it were to be like this is an accent filter, how do they collect those samples? Who decides what gets put into which accent? Like
Mhm.
the back end of that, very very interesting on my end.
Oh, yeah, yeah. If you're into computational linguistics and this is also something you're interested in, I bet that would be a gold mine for you. Coming up very soon, maybe not now, but really, really soon. Because I think it's tackling other kind of more broad general things but very soon things are going to get specialized so, so quickly. And one thing I'm really interested in myself is the application of how can we have synthetic voices with tone and intonation, right? So that it sounds like even if it's just I don't know, it's just Google is talking to me, and Google can know from my tone of voice that I'm frustrated, right? Results are not coming back the way I want. Can
Mm,
Google tell that I'm frustrated and then somehow adjust what it's doing to make me happier, right? Because I should be the overlord here, not Skynet, and well, at least I should
yeah.
feel like it. So I'm really curious about intonation more than anything else because I think the mechanics of pronunciation and on the accent level, at the phonemic level, I think won't be too difficult, right? That won't be too difficult. It'll be categorization and a lot of
Yeah.
data, but I don't think it'll be difficult. What I think will be interesting will be like sarcasm.
Semantic.
Yeah, yeah, semantics, and sarcasm and like the real connection. Like, are we gonna feel connected with these voices, or is there something human that's gonna be missing? Something about the resonance, something about all of it put together. Like, I'm really interested to see what goes on there. So yeah, new frontiers, scary,
Think it
written.
would be more or less scary, like talking to a synthetic voice if it had that adaptability.
I think we all have our own comfort level, with that. And like, I'm kind of an old lady as it is, so I think I don't want it to be too friendly, like, "Get out of my house." But also, I don't want it to be too mechanical. I'm at the point where, like, "Ugh, I don't like that sterile robotic voice," but I'd also like to be able to choose voices and have a voice that I really like, because we all have our preferences as well. If you remember when Siri then had the voices that you could select and they were like, "Oh, here's voice number 42," and it's very clearly like an African American male voice, right? But they wouldn't say that. And then so I think everybody is gonna have a preference for people that they either like to hear for whatever reason or people that speak more like them. You know what I mean? So I
Hmm.
think I think there's gonna be a wide range of voices that we all can personalize.
Yeah. The thing also that I'm going down the horror tunnel because why not?
Let's
Let-
go dark. Let's go dark.
yeah. But I think of people of a certain age right now that still are very easily scammed on the phone calls that are like, "Hi, don't hang up." Which are very obvious to some very sympathetic
Mhm.
voices. That if we get more and more realistic, the ability to scam people is going to be endless.
Mhm, mhm. I've seen a few already where they're like, "We have your daughter in your room," and it sounds to the mother, obviously she's distraught, but it sounds like the daughter or whoever, right? It sounds like the person because they've already had the samples of the voice enough to make it sound like the person is crying or sobbing or getting some words out, but it's recognizable enough. It's already happening. Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
It's like an arms race, It's like germ warfare, but with AI, I think. Gonna be so difficult, so difficult. I'm just gonna bury my head in the sand. I think sometimes that's going to be my approach a little bit and just not answer my phone for a while. But yeah, I wonder if like security is going to have to get a lot higher, and I think there's got to be an intersection between AI and like blockchain, right? So there's got to be a way to verify what we consider real
A
once we
source.
define that. Yeah,
Yeah.
and what's like considered not, like you said, even just as far as like who gets paid, for their work or for this work of the machine, or maybe the programmer of the voice, or are we going to own voices and then sell these voices? I don't know. License the voices. Who knows? It's a wild west right now, I think.
Yes, because even right now, there are sites such as like Fiverr and Upwork where you can kind of freelance and big executive places are taking their commercials there and saying, "Oh, we'll give you $50 to say this thing," and people are doing it because they're like, "Oh, yeah, I get to be a voice," and that would normally be like $10,000.
Mhm,
It's like,
mhm.
so if
Gone.
that's happening just here, then you could easily get someone to just be like, "Oh, just read these 3 samples," and then it's used forever.
Right, right, right. Say j, say ch, say the, right? Get all the sounds in there. Could you read
Yeah.
"Comma Gets a Cure," please? And then yeah, and then your voice is done forever. Sold to the highest bidder. It really begs the question to me of like to go big, to go wide on this, of like what's the nature of then our worth, our value? Should we start being paid like a universal base income? Should we not be even doing this work anymore? Only just for fun? Like, I don't know where this is going, but maybe, hopefully, it's going in a good direction where we'll be happier in the end.
I think, as you said, there'll always be that want for a human connection,
Uh,
especially when it comes to something as personal as the voice. If someone's trying to work on their own voice, I think that will always be
mhm, mhm.
something.
Yeah, I think it's gonna, maybe even there'll be a premium, right, for authentic yet imperfect voices, right? Maybe we're gonna value a lot more the false starts and the ums and the uhs, right?
The
From
things
that
you're
too.
trained not to do right now.
Yeah, like, that's what we need to do. We need to get started on, here's where you insert the ums, right? This is where you should pause in this way. Yeah. Speaking of which, like you said, people are gonna now maybe want to work on their own accents. For example, now that we're gonna have more time on our hands, maybe because I myself am using AI for my job, and I'm getting a little more time, also because of the strike in Hollywood or in Atlanta, wherever. What can people do now to maybe work on their own accent or accents, multiple accents? What do you think people can do with their time right now?
Yeah, well, one of the benefits of this strike for people is that they're not having to be kind of pulled in 7 directions at once. They can really focus in on something. They might have the time now to do it. And we don't know when it's going to end. It could be October. It could be tomorrow. If it ends tomorrow, then we're back. So you may as well get ready with a skill that you've always wanted to do. Start now so that by the time the strike does end, you're ready and you're ahead of all the other people that have just been kind of sitting around wondering, worried what's going to be happening.
Mhm,
Yeah.
mhm. Kinda brings me back to
The
pandemic
perfect
times.
opportunity.
I bought a ukulele and it's still sitting there. So like I have all this time. Who knows when the pandemic's gonna end, right? I'll learn ukulele. I can do a couple chords. That's about it. It's hard to plan and be like, oh, this could end tomorrow. Well, then it's hard to be like, oh, I should start this big project today, but it might end
Yeah.
tomorrow. Yeah, I think it's the uncertainty can be really difficult for people. What would you advise then? And what are you doing right now? Like, do you have less work right now? Are you doing something to get ahead on your skills too? What's that like for you?
Yeah. It makes me think of my grandfather when he was getting older. Um, his umbrella broke and he lived in Northern Ireland, which is perpetually raining. And he was like, "Oh, I'm too old. I'm not going to buy another one." And then his children were like, "Yes, but say you don't die and it rains tomorrow. What are you going to do?" He went out and bought a new umbrella. But I always be on the kind of side of, if it's something that you want to do, there's no better time to start than now.
Mm,
When the
mhm,
strike initially started, because I think we're about 3 weeks, maybe more by the time this comes
more, yeah,
out.
mhm.
But when it first started, I noticed a dip down because a lot of my work is for auditions. I meet people that they're like, "I've got this audition. tomorrow,
Yeah,
and I
yeah,
need
yeah.
to start like this.
Mhm,
And
mhm,
so that obviously kind of abruptly stopped. But then I've had quite a few people reach out, and I've been doing some more group classes,
mhm.
which have been very popular. And I'm going to be doing a lot more of those in June as well. So I've been inviting special guests, which has been great because usually they're actors that would usually be working, and now they're off and looking for something to do. So that's been really fun having other styles of people with me in
Mm.
the session. So
Oh.
yes, I've got some planned out for June, and I just put a story out today to see what are people looking for? What would they like to do? Because it's very easy for me to be like, I'm doing another English accent course. Come and do this. They're like, okay, great. But
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
the great thing about accent coaching is that it's all different accents. So why just stick to that? People obviously have a trust factor with me being from England.
Mhm.
They're like, oh yes, you can do that one. I believe you. But it can be more fun to do in a little bit of something else as well. I did a Scottish one a couple of weeks ago that went really well.
Mm.
We'll see what the public say.
Yes,
Go from
yes.
there.
That's the beauty of social media too. You can just throw out some polls and see what people are into, or just ask them and get some responses too. So this is it could be glass half full kind of view of, oh, it's a time to play, it's a time to like reorganize, see what people are into these days. So on the positive side, that could be a lot of fun, for you. But like you said, who knows when it ends? You've got stuff lined up for June. What if your umbrella is broken and it does rain tomorrow?
Exactly. What about you? How does this affect you? Because you mainly do second language.
I do work with actors. I work with actors, but not exclusively. I'm not a dialect coach, but I do get a lot of people for auditions. But yeah, not so much right now, right?
Right.
Yeah, I feel like also in the summertime, a lot of people take a break to travel and things like that. So the timing to me seems a little bit normal in a way because like this would be a downtime for me anyways. All
Hmm.
that's fine. And in terms of the strike, it doesn't really affect me as much because like you said, I'm more about long term. It's more about skills. It's skills. It's not
Yeah.
necessarily I have this audition tomorrow, though that does happen. And that's like not the way you want to do it. So now's a good time to reflect, I think, on that. The bigger issue for me, I think lately is more the AI stuff. And it's more
Mm.
about not doomsday kind of stuff, but how can my clients not fall behind, basically, right? Because it's moving so quickly.
Oh.
And especially if you're not like a digital native, if you're not already good at technology, it just feels like too much. And so I'm trying to do this weekly tip series every Wednesday. Here's one thing you can do with AI that will help you with your accent work, right? One little tiny
That's very
thing every week. And it's changing so much, but we're trying to like get the basics out there so that it can be kind of a resource because yeah, who knows where it's going to go, but it doesn't matter where it goes because if you wait, you're already going to be behind. I want to hear more about what you've got going on in June in your classes, but I'm going to do an accent challenge every month and I'm doing it as a
Ooh.
club. Yeah, yeah. I used to do it on Telegram, but now I'm just going to add it to all my Discord stuff. So now they're already on my Discord so they can just do this challenge, as well and it'll be a rotating thing. So I think it's going to be great because it'll be a little bit more permanent.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm just building that right now. What are you building? What are you working on?
Well, I've recently started to migrate my idea of going live away from Instagram. As much as I love it and
Mhm.
it served its purpose, I feel like it has served its purpose. As a user myself, now when I go through the stories and I accidentally click on the live, I'm like, oh no. But
And then you feel bad, right? Do you click on the live and you're like,
yeah,
"Oh, I
and then
guess
you're
I'll
like,
stay
and
for a
now I'm
little
stuck
while."
here for an hour.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah. Oops, yeah.
So that's not exactly the vibe that I want to give out if I'm trying to like do something for people. So I'm starting to do the TikTok live instead, which is
Mm,
fun as well because then people react a lot more to that. And so I'm gonna try and start like going live with people either coaching strangers, but starting with guests, like doing something and then like have
mhm,
people come in, join and do it that way.
mm.
So I'm excited to see what that brings.
Oh,
Um
fun.
I've got a couple more group classes coming up again with some actors that have very kindly agreed to be part of it, which I'm excited for.
Tell us about it. Tell
Special
us about
team.
it. Yeah.
I'm gonna be doing one English people that struggle with American accent as
Mm,
well.
Mhm.
because everything has been like the British accent, the British accent. So now this way, it's like I know all the things that we do because I would do it too. Come and be with me and with my special guest who is also comedian as well. So it like keeps it light. So that way,
Mhm, mhm.
also it's not just for acting. It could be for anyone that wants to.
Awesome. Oh, that sounds like fun. Yeah, you always have really fun, like, activities and things going on that to me, that's the point, right? For some people, they take it too seriously, but to me, I
Yeah,
think, and to you, it should be more fun. It should be light, It shouldn't be the end of the world. I know that there are issues, there are problems, there's a lot of biases, there's a lot of, like, social justice issues, which are all really important, but I think the work itself can also be really fun. Yeah.
absolutely.
Do you wanna tell us more about, like, some skills that you think would be good to develop right now?
As a user yourself, post pandemic, do you feel like you value like on demand courses anymore, or was it more like would you prefer to meet with a person?
I never did. I am one of the many people who never finished a course. Like, how many things have I paid
Mhm.
for and haven't finished, maybe even let alone started? And that's I think a reason that I struggled with this challenge that I'm doing. I struggled with, should I call it a course? Should I call it, what should I call it, right? Because I feel like course now, it's heavy. It's, yeah,
Mm.
it's like do or die kind of thing, and
Yeah.
it puts a lot of pressure on people. So I'm it's essentially a course, right? Because you get some information, you practice every day, and it's quite
You improve.
comprehensive, and you'll improve, right? And that's the point. But I'm not calling it a course because I feel like nobody will finish. I'm calling it a challenge because I feel like that is the challenge. The challenge is to show up.
Oh,
So I never really finished a lot of maybe one of those courses that I took, like, ever.
yeah.
So yeah, so I feel that pain, and I'm trying to do it in a way that is more fun, that is more engaging, that's more live for sure. And that's why I do clubs and challenges. So that's what I call them, clubs and challenges. What about you?
Yeah. I like the idea still of on demand things, but there is always that worry, that
Uh-huh.
issue. But I also want to be able to help as many people as possible, and doing things that are live restricts kind of availability and time.
Mhm.
So it's trying to
Mhm.
find a happy medium between is there some kind of like hybrid going to the office and working remotely? Is there some kind of hybrid structure that would be most beneficial of like do this part online and then we're all going to meet here and then do this part and like
Mhm.
I wonder if that might be a smart.
Something between a club and a thing, right? Which could be a rotating kind of basis. Yeah, that's kind of what I'm
Yeah.
trying to build a little bit. Here's this thing that you do on your own, this challenge. But for example, in my case, I have Wednesday office hours every week, and like
Mm.
every week, you could, like, come every week, at least to that. And if not, then you might want to do the club, and then you'll get like the challenge also for free. So I'm trying to integrate them. I don't know how it's gonna look either yet, but I feel you, and that's the problem that I see too. There has to be a happy balance somehow. We just gotta figure it out. I like having a library of things that I can go back to, if I
Mm.
want. So I wanna make sure that people have that too. Maybe that's a library of videos, maybe it's a list of resources, maybe it's just us being available, for Q&A kind of thing. I had this thing just today, the software that I use to record. It's called
Mhm.
Ecamm, and I have my Discord and I have my Ecamm, and they just don't play well together, right? I don't know what it is. And I've talked to everybody from both worlds, and they're like, "No, that should be fine, that should be fine." I'm like, "I know it should be fine, but it's not." So finally this really, like, high up guy, said, "Oh, let's just jump on a call together today." And I was like, "Ooh, that's really nice," and I
Okay.
think it feels really nice to get, like, help from somebody you really
Specialist
esteem.
attention.
Yeah, I was like, "Really? You're gonna
Yeah.
jump on a call with me?" Didn't fix the problem, but it was really nice.
You felt special and heard and like
At
yeah.
the time, yes, yes, that's all I needed. Maybe that meeting was actually more important than solving the problem, feeling heard, like you said. So maybe that's what we need to think about. Tell us more about what you enjoy about your work and working where you're working, as a dialect coach. What's something that you really enjoy, or maybe a story of a really good day that happened to you?
The thing about LA, it's all about the people and the connections, as they say. But you really don't know who knows,
Mm,
and so you could be working with. I was working with somebody for a very long time, um, multiple auditions and kind of skills here and there. And then I was online one day and saw that they had their wedding spread in Vogue, and that like Brad Willis's daughter was their maid of honor. I was like, oh,
Oh, that's
okay.
you. This is the person I work with. Hmm.
Yeah. There was another person that they were like, it was actually this one that was like, in 10 days' time, I have to be the lead of this. And a real person, they're executive producing, they're going to be on set with me. I was like, "Oh, okay." And they're like, I have no time. Would you come to this Father's Day party that I'm supposed to go to? I was like, that's fine. And
Mhm.
but yeah, we can practice that. So get there. It the David and David from Game of Thrones. This is before the final thing. It's the Always Sunny in Philadelphia crew
Uh-huh.
and all of their friends. They're like really tight knit buddies. They're like, hi guys.
I'm here. I'm here to
Yeah.
do this thing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Um, so
Nice.
you can have like wild days like that, and then you can have like really productive days on set when like someone is fighting something particularly challenging, and then it just clicks
Mm.
just at the right time,
Mhm,
and then
mhm.
you're like, yes. And I recently did an episode of Dave on Hulu, and the person that was like the lead guest star of that, she was like, I'm so worried about this and terrible accents. I was like, I don't think you are. We worked a little bit, and she knocked out. But
Nice, nice, nice. So, okay, on the flip side then, what's something about your work that is not your favorite?
I think the kind of the way that it can get snatched quite quickly. You can be in talks with people and like set getting paperwork ready, all of that, and then they'll be like, actually, they're just going to be about changing their whims. The producers being like, you know what? I don't think we want the accent. After you've worked really hard, I was working with somebody who was like at the final screen test for a TV series. They were again playing a real person who existed. And so
Mm,
we've been like really focusing in on the YouTube archival video, getting it.
yeah.
They were being flown out to LA from Georgia. They were like, oh, they just gave it to the other guy. Like,
Oh,
"Yeah, you sound great."
that sudden disappointment for you and
Yeah.
them, I'm sure.
Wow. Yeah.
Yeah, just ripping the rug right out from under you because, like you said, it's like at somebody's whim, somebody's mercy, and you just never know what's gonna happen. That instability could be really difficult to deal with.
The glass half full part of that, though, is always just knowing that you're putting forward the best work and that you've still
Mm,
made progress with this person, and
mm,
they've developed a skill even if it doesn't get showcased. Because
mhm.
it happens to actors all the time. They can shoot a thing, and then their scene gets cut.
Yeah,
like,
yeah, yeah,
like
yeah,
they're
yeah.
sitting there at the watch party with their family.
Never mind.
Um, yeah,
Pass the chips, yeah.
that happens. But everyone in this industry too. But I think, yeah, the idea of making the work fun but also solid is
Mhm,
what I always strive to do.
mhm, and being at peace with the fact that, like, it might nobody else might ever see this, but I'm still proud of, like, what we did together.
Yeah,
We also haven't talked about your newsletter. Maybe tell us a little bit more about the classes, where people can sign up for those.
absolutely. I think we're gonna have some really exciting times in June. I've always thought of the idea of a newsletter, and I've never really done it. I like would send two in a whole year and be like, "Oh, here's one in February. Here's one in September." Like, I don't know what else to say.
Yeah.
So my challenge to myself is I've now started a weekly newsletter that went out last week, and by the time this is out, it will be out again for sure.
Alright,
Um,
alright.
so that's going to keep people up to date on various offerings, but it will also give them kind of tips and tricks to do. It comes out on a Friday. They can sign up. There's a linked tree on my Instagram bio. One of them says, sign up for your newsletter. So you can click there. My Instagram, my Twitter, my TikTok, all of my handles are Accent Coach Jack. And my
Mhm.
website is accentcoachjack.com.
Yeah. Consistency across platforms, consistency in sending stuff out. I do a newsletter too every week. Mine's on Thursday. So you can get mine and I can get yours and we can stay
Exactly.
in touch that way. We should get together more often and discuss strategies and maybe do some collaborations of some kind because I feel like we're
Yeah,
on the same
absolutely.
wavelength, about a lot of these things.
Yeah,
So,
this is always so much fun. Thank you very much for having me.
I love having you. Yes, it's always so much fun, and I feel like we got to do it more often. Maybe once a month or something like that. We can get together and just have a little chat, maybe on TikTok or something like that. I have yet to
Yeah,
explore TikTok too much, but maybe we could do a collab over there and see how that goes. Awesome,
absolutely. Yeah, no, that would be
awesome.
awesome.
I appreciate you coming on with me today and recording this very much.
Cool.
Yeah, it's awesome. I will say thank you again for coming today. I
Thank
love
you for
seeing
having
you,
me.
love talking with you, and let's do it again sometime soon.
Let's do it. Have
All
a
right.
good one.
Awesome. See you soon.
Bye-bye.
Bye, Jack.